Yo, 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 yo. Hey, Fusionist. How's it going? All right, we're back. Hello, hello, hello. How have you been? Been a while. Over a week. 10, 12 days, something like that. Been a minute. Pretty good, pretty good. We had GDC last week, the Game Developers Conference here in San Francisco. I got to go to that, which was pretty awesome. Met a lot of people, got to hang out with some great devs. Some devs who are off stream. I also got to meet some on stream people. I got to meet Practical NPC in person, which was pretty cool. Hang out with him a bit. I got to meet Adam C. Eunice, hang out with him for a bit too. And plenty of other devs that aren't really online. Yeah. Went to the Indie Game Summit, learned some cool stuff that I think we're going to roll into our kind of development and launch plan, which I think we'll talk about a little later. Yeah, Adam, I know. That was wild to me. I was planning to like get to hang out with like Bad Cop and Practical and stuff, but actually I heard Adam was coming, but getting to actually sit down in the park there and like just chat with him for a while was like really awesome. Yeah, Adam has been around forever. It was really great. He actually came to the Godot meetup in Yerba Buena Gardens. Yo, Ryson, yes, we're back. Yeah, that was like a usually like a meeting your hero moment is like kind of usually not as great as you think it would be, but yeah, getting to talk to Adam was really cool. He's really nice, very nice, very approachable guy. But yeah, we did that. I did that from Saturday to Saturday. Got to meet a bunch of Godot people, Godot Foundation people, contributors, users like myself, you know, people just using the engine to make stuff. Really pumps me up for GodotCon in Boston in May. But yeah, it was awesome. We could probably talk about GDC for like the whole stream, but we should probably work on stuff. Oh, physics lab. You're my hero. Thanks for that. All right, screen sharing. I did a little bit of dev work over the last week, but what I was actually working on was mostly the remastered version of A Following Wind, which is my Ludum Dare 55 game. Because Ludum Dare 57 is, let's look at the calendar. Ludum Dare 57 is not this upcoming weekend, but it's apparently going to be the next weekend, April 4th through 6th. I think we're going to do that. We have basically no time to prepare, but I really want to post up the remastered version of A Following Wind, which I'm pretty happy with now. I did a little bit of balance to it. It looks a lot better. This is not what I'm opening. I'm just talking about what I've been doing. I'm opening the main project because I feel like we need to kind of get our bearings a little bit here with this project. I actually had some really awesome talks that I went to during the Indie Game Summit, given by a bunch of people that were like, they felt really relevant to me because they were about generally projects that are kind of longer and kind of like systemic, kind of like what we're thinking about with this game, which is kind of a more systems heavy simulation thing that we're probably going to be working on for years. So be sure to check it out. Oh yeah, I'll mention when I post it. I'm going to try posting it because we're going to be hitting a lot of stuff all at once. That weekend, the weekend of Ludum, because Ludum Dare 55 was the same weekend that I got my affiliate status. So our affiliate anniversary will probably be showing up around there. And just in, you know, in recognition of that, in the 1 year from you know, doing my first Godot game for LD55, I just want to put it out there. I want to put like a little nice remastered version of it out there that's a little better, a little bit more variety, a little bit more balance. Maybe some new music. I still need to record some music for it. It's kind of the last thing I'm waiting on. I guess I could show it off a little bit. Who cares? We're getting back into things. Rhiannon Journey, subscribing with the Prime for 2 months. Really appreciate that. Hello, hello. How's it going? So, just touching on this briefly, this is kind of the remastered version of this game that we're putting out. And this is kind of its current state. Oh no, doxing myself. I've got my full name here. I need to put a mask underneath the title card there so you can actually see it. But yeah, this is where we ended up with this game, which is obviously not our main game. This is our little Ludum Dare 55 game, which happened to be our first game in Godot. There's a game timer so you can keep track of it. I made all 3 of these spells free. I had a cost for them, but I was not enjoying that, so I've decided to make them free. Did we get through, or did we get stuck? No, we got through, okay. So now you can summon all 3 of these spells, the Gust of Wind, the Whirlwind, and the Lightning Strike. They stick around for a lot longer now, so like you have to think about it when you're casting them. You have to think about the consequences, because this is just going to stay here. So like it's useful for this ship, but the next ship might get messed up. Oh my god. How's it going? How's it going, Rhiannon? Ryson, you might enter the Godot Wild Jam that starts on the 11th. You struggled so far to think of stuff for jams, though. It's hard. Yeah, I find the time requirements to be really helpful, which is part of the reason why oh, there's the little sea monster we made for it. We did a bunch of this stuff post-jam a year ago, like over the early summer of 2024. But I always left a few things unfinished, so I'm just going through in my own time and kind of putting the little finishing touches on it. So I'm hoping to have a bunch of different little stuff available. But yeah, Godot Wild Jam is cool, but it's every month, and it's 9 days, which is just too long for me. Like, I can't do a 9-day jam. No Armageddon spell. I mean, we have our Lightning Strike spell. So we can create a destructive... It destroys ships underneath it. And what's funny is then you can then knock it off course into, like, a new direction. So all of these things interact, and then the Whirlwind will redirect clouds that hit it. So there's a lot of interactions that you might not have been planning. So now this dangerous spell is going to come over here and probably kill this ship. So there's a bunch of stuff happening. Will it actually kill it? Oh no, you got through. Oh no, the ship is sacking the temple. So yeah, I tried to add a lot of variety to this. I'm pretty happy with this. This is the game we made. It's come a long way from its original version, which I can kind of show. Where is it? Itch? Let's go to Itch. Super long way from this. This is what it used to look like. There's like terrible cloud effects, no details or anything, and we ended up with this, so I'm pretty happy. Sea monsters, multiple spells, different kinds of ships. The Jess Code's water shader. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna try to release that in the next week or so, just on itch. Just put up a remastered version of this game. There's no tutorialization, and I don't think I'm gonna do any. That's like maybe the bridge too far for me. Rhiannon, it's going good. You haven't gotten much done outside of work this week. You just got yourselves another dog. Ooh, that's fun. I would love a dog. Ryson, maybe you'll do the LD. You need an invite to make an account on the LD site. Is that true? Your site is so jank. Maybe you'll offer your service as a programmer and let someone be an art and idea guy. Oh, yeah. There's some good resources for that. You should join the Jam Central, the old Jam Central server, which is now the Down to Jam server. I'm going to grab an invite link to you. This is right now. This server is all about the new Down to Jam game jam, which just finished. But they also have a lot of people that just do jams. Oh, can I get you the link? I'll post it in our Discord. If I can get the link to show up. I can't paste the link. It says hidden use copy button, and then when I use the copy button, it won't let me. So I think I can only send individual invites. So I'm gonna try to send an invite to you, Ryson. Let me see if I can invite a specific person. Yeah, there you go. All right, invite sent. All right, we figured it out. Oh, you're already in there? Well, I tried. Physics, you know a guy with a lot of toe jam. Wow. That I'm not sure about. Let me see about the LD jam. You're trying to create an account at lgdamjam.com and not able to do it. Like here. You're at this site, right? So you try to create an account. Oh, you need an invite code. Oh, this is like publicly available, I feel like. Like, I feel like they post this invite code, and I think they maybe update it for every jam, but it's going to be something stupid. It'll be like LD57 or something. Let me look into that. Because, yeah, that'll be cool. All right, so what are we going to do today? This is kind of our getting back in the groove, so I don't think we're going to do any real work. I think we're just going to hang out for like an hour or two. Because I have been swamped. I said I had events from Saturday to Saturday, so that's Saturday the 15th to Saturday the 22nd. Then I went back to my day job Sunday night, Sunday the 23rd. I was working all night. And I worked Monday, Tuesday. So I've just had like no breaks. So I don't have a lot of energy. Physics lab, you thought you were going to a Ludum Dare jam one day and ended up in an LDS convention. You were funny today. You're on a roll today, Physics. Working the day job at night. I know, isn't it crazy, Fusionist? Working my day job at night. There was just a lot. It's really hard for me to take time off of work. I had 4 different people like covering, and we still missed some stuff. So I probably needed like 5 to 6 people covering for me. Kind of crazy. But yeah, so I've been kind of getting back into it. I've been really tired. So, but I learned a lot of stuff. I want to talk about some of this stuff. I almost did this and then I got sidetracked. I sidetracked myself. I went to a couple talks at the Indie Game Summit. It'll probably end up on YouTube eventually. One of them, which was really good, was like, well, it was called like What is 1.0 or something. And it was about being like in indefinite early access. And it was this talk by some devs, including Tarn of Dwarf Fortress and Jason Grinblatt of like Caves of Cud. And it was like what it's like to like be working on a game for, you know, many years. For them, it was over a decade each. Like Caves of Cud was like 17 years or something like that total. And Dwarf Fortress is like famously like 22 years or something like that. And it was just a lot of talk about how to build up incrementally the audience and the trust and the community and stuff over the years. And that was cool. But then I saw another talk call about how to make your game available while it's in development. And that is the thing that I think is going to affect our plan going forward for the rest of the year. I think that has changed my approach. What's my day job? I do like HR backend stuff, physics. So I handle all of the paperwork and like a bunch of like reporting and like auditing and compliance stuff, all on the back end for like a medium-sized company. And I'm kind of one of the only people doing it. So getting coverage is like really hard. We have a very small team that supports a very large, well, I wouldn't say very large. Proportionally, we have a very small team for the number of people that we support. Anyway, this other talk, which is kind of the crux of what I wanted to go into right now, is about making your game free while it's in development. And this talk was given by the maker of Cosmeteer, Walt. So like, if anyone's not familiar, is Cosmeteer, Starship Architect and Commander. It's an incredible, very systemic game. This game is great. It's about building spaceships. You build your 2D spaceships in this very simulated environment, and then, you know, you've got actual crew running around in real time, and you fight all these battles with other ships. It's very cool, very cool. This is actually the game that convinced me that the open-ended voxel-based spaceship game I was working on was not feasible. I saw this and I was like, I can't do this. I can't even imitate like a fraction of this, which is how we ended up on more of an abstracted FTL style game. But this game is great. And this game has been in early access on Steam since 2022. So it's entering its third year of early access, I guess. But Walt's been working on this game for like over a decade. Physics. If I make my game free while in development, don't you miss the wave of people who would be excited to pay? I don't think so. This was the crux of Walt's talk on this, which was that, I mean, I think it's a different case if you're like a well-known brand and stuff, but he's coming from a similar position than I'm coming into, where you're building up this audience and interest in this game that's going to take a long time to make. It's very systematic, and you don't have like a huge following to start. Like, obviously, if you're making like Hades 2, you don't make it free while it's in development, because there's already a billion people that want to play Hades. But Ryson, you heard early access was not the way to go money-wise. So there's multiple stages to this, which is important, and I think is going to be crucial to kind of the way we go forward. So this is the current version of Cosmeteer. It's available on early access in Steam. Fun fact, Cosmeteer has sold 500,000 copies, 500,000 copies since it released in early access, 200,000 of which it sold in the first month in early access. So that, to me, kind of disputes the idea that if you make it free while in development, people aren't going to come back and pay for it. Would players lose access to the game once it goes pay to play? No. So this is an important part about this strategy. We're kind of teasing out the different aspects of it in this talk, because it's right now in our conversation, because it's kind of call and response between you and me in the chat here. But the talk is a little more top down and clear what's happening. Cosmeteer. So Cosmeteer's current version is on Steam in early access. However, the classic version of the game, which this is a lot of information. Oh, this is the changelog for the classic version of the game. So the classic version of the game, this version is available on itch.io. So this, I'm going to turn off of this website because it's not as much of a visual aid as I would hope. So this is the premise. This is the premise, which is that you've got your game, it's in development. You post a free, I'm calling it an alpha. You basically post the feature incomplete alpha version on itch for free. That's what you update. That's what you make available. So people can play the game as you're working on it for free. Once the game hits feature complete, like once all the features are in the game, you leave that version up. You know, you make one more build now that you've got all the features in it. This is your mostly feature complete version, your final free version. You put that up on itch, and then you switch over to beta. And the beta is what you make available in Steam in early access. And so now you can take money for the game. You keep the alpha version available for free on itch indefinitely. You want to update it to the extent to which, like, you know, you find bugs or whatever, but there's no more feature development on the alpha version once all the features are in there. For us, that'd basically be like, we're working on all the systems, we're getting all the tools and the editors and everything into the game. We are making the game available for free on itch during that whole process as we're building out systems and stuff like that. Once all the systems are in place, you take a snapshot of that. That's your final alpha version. And now that you have all the systems in place, our next challenge is just content, just creating content. That's where we switch from systems design to just content creation. That's like creating more ships, creating more scenarios, campaigns, writing out story, creating more art. Like now we've got all the skeleton. It's almost like a horizontal slice. And now we need to flesh it out with all of the content. And that stuff, all of that additional content and stuff, that's the stuff that you'd save for the beta once you've switched from systems design to content creation. And I think that's pretty smart. You're testing the game a lot while it's for free on itch. Because of the way our game works, where there's like tools, like I'm building all my tools in game, like the ship editor tool is already in game. People will be able to create their own ships and stuff. So people can make their, you know, that stuff's going to be supported. You might be asking, okay, what's the big feature difference then? If what you're telling me is the only real difference between the alpha and the beta version is content, is there a feature difference? And I'm going to say yes, there's one particular feature difference that's super key, that's different between the alpha and the beta version. And that's going to be that Steam Workshop, that's going to be mod support. You know, people will be able to share mods and content and like their own scenarios and their own ships and stuff. That stuff will be shareable through Steam Workshop, which we can only do once the game is in Steam in early access. Before that, we can't really do it. And this is for like, and so I think the alpha versions, the 2 alpha versions, here we can say create group, alpha versions. We can call this the alpha. The alpha is two parts. And this is the beta. This is, I don't know, gold. So we need to, part of what I need to do, having thought about this, is I need to think about, so the entire alpha will be available for free on itch from the MVP launch through to the full release. After that, development will switch to a beta branch where we will enable Steam Workshop so that people can share their creations, like their different ships and their scenarios and stuff with each other easily. It'll be available paid on Steam, discounted in early access. Eventually we'll switch to a 1.0 release, whenever we reach some point where we feel like the game is done at full price. It'll leave early access. So I think going forward, what the thing I really need to work out is what constitutes the MVP early access, the MVP launch. Like, what's the minimum viable product for the alpha? I'm thinking that all it really is, which this aligns with what Walt did for Cosmeteer, is it's really just the tile block editor, which is like our ship editor tool. Like this thing. Which is the main thing we've been working on so far in this game, which is just, you know, our editor tool that lets us build ships and stuff, you know, this whole deal. This is our real focus right now. I think this is the one part that's super important. We need this ship editor tool. This needs to be finished in my mind for us to even be talking about, you know, an early access MVP or whatever. We need to have this tool finished so that we can actually build ships with it. And then I think the second part of it is going to be just a basic battlefield, like just a basic tactical map. I'm calling it the 9-box battlefield because it's basically, there's 9 positions, because it's like almost kind of a board game setup. Like you can't freely move around the board. There's the central position, which is the position that your ship occupies. And then there's neighboring positions, obviously the adjacent and the diagonal. So I'm calling it the 9-box battlefield. I think that's a silly name, but it's the best name I've got for it. And that, I think, for me, would constitute the minimum viable product of the alpha. And once I have those two things, a way to build ships and a way to test ships out in battle, I think I could put this up on itch and get people trying it out. And then as we push to a full release, then we want things like the scenario editor, which is like our ability to script encounters, like scripted encounters, as well as things like a strategic layer, which would be like, you know, the rogue, like, here's your branching path map thing that you have to figure out, that you have to manage. Physics lab, you can use a discounted cash flow formula to determine the discounted price to charge for the beta. A discounted cash flow formula. That's interesting. What kind of data would you put into something like that? Because I was just going to be simple. I'm just thinking like full price for this game is probably going to be like 25 bucks. You know, given, you know, that it's not going to be done for at least 5 or 6 or more years, thinking about inflation and where indie premium pricing kind of is right now. I think a full price of something like 25 bucks or so is pretty reasonable. And then the discounted price probably going to be around the $20. Will probably just be 20% off. And that lets us do the $19.99 or whatever thing. But if I'm interested in attempting some calculations. I've studied up on pricing differences for games, and from all the data I've found, it's really weird. And there's some areas that are basically just indistinct. Like Butterscotch Shenanigans did a bunch of testing their game at prices between $10 and $15, and in their experience, the distinction didn't matter. It made no difference. Selling it at $10 versus $15. They didn't like make it up in volume. There wasn't a perception issue. It really just didn't matter. So at the moment, I'm not too concerned about pricing reasoning, but I'm interested in, you know, putting more thought into it. Physics. Basically, you determine what price you want to charge for the pool price and then discount back at some discount rate to today's dollars. Oh, interesting. So that's considering some time difference. So is that's like taking into account like inflation over like 5 years or something like that? Interesting. All right, physics. So you're saying, imagine I come out with the beta and the plan is to come out with 1.0 in 5 years. You plan to charge 25 bucks for the game when it goes 1.0, so the discounted price would be $15.50 at a 10% discounted rate. Geez, that's like the projection. Is that a real inflation projection over 5 years? %10 is what you would earn off the S&P 500 on average every year. Wow. All right, you know all this math stuff. You know this finance stuff. Cool. I'm gonna need to think about that because that's a good point. However, I think in our world, I actually don't know how long we're going to be in early access compared to. I imagine most of our time is going to be spent here in our free alpha state. Like, I feel like the vast majority of development time is going to be spent here. So, like, if we're in alpha, we'll probably be in alpha, unpaid alpha for like the next 4 or 5 years or something like that. Then we might spend, you know, a couple of years in beta, depending on how quickly I can flesh out the content for the game. So it's going to be definitely, the plan is not to be in beta for like 5 years. The plan is to spend the vast majority of dev time while we're in alpha. And I don't know, obviously content creation is going to be expensive and time consuming, but at least Walt with like Cosmeteer, what Walt did is he actually started paying the best, he took the best content creators, because his game is also very moddable, and he basically approached the best of the ship designers and artists and stuff who were modifying the alpha version in their own time, just for fun. He actually hired a bunch of them on as contractors to create the ships and the art for the full game. And so that is potentially an option for us if we enter into beta and we get a decent amount of money, or if we get like a publisher or something like that. That's an option for us. Otherwise, it's just gonna be me creating the content. In which case, maybe the beta would end up being longer. Physics, 10% is what you can expect to earn that money if you used it for a different investment opportunity cost. That's an interesting approach to the thought there. Huh, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool approach to take. That's very thoughtful. But anyway, I just drew this up last night, this little table thing here. It really needs to be fleshed out. Because it really doesn't describe exactly what's going on. Like, I need to make this like a feature list thing. Because this feature list set is like additive, right? So I think we need the tile block editor. I think we need the 9-box battlefield so we can have tactical battles in the ship editor. And I think that's really all we need for this MVP thing. I feel like this is doable within a year. We've spent many months on the tile block editor and it's not quite done. And it's very tightly integrated with this 9-box battlefield thing. And the 9-box is just so that there's some maneuverability, because space is so large, all positioning is relative, right? So like you kind of care if someone's to your left, but you don't really care much beyond that. Versus if someone's to your right or someone's behind you or something like that. So there's gonna be some amount of maneuvering. So we do need to make this kind of battlefield. So I think that's gonna take a little while, because what's kind of implicit in this is what I should add to this is maybe a shipboard simulation, because that feels like maybe a distinct, important thing here. I'm going to put that above the 9-box battlefield. I'm going to say shipboard simulation and maybe shorten it if I can, because this is pretty long. Or I might just make it taller. Obsidian is kind of finicky sometimes. Like positioning in Obsidian is a little weird. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of this is not sufficient to describe what I need. I also need the full simulation of what's happening on the ships. And then once that's done, I can think about this 9-box battlefield, which is about like the interactions between ships that are adjacent or diagonal to each other. Physics. The basic idea is you would charge $15.50 in the beta, invest that money in something that returns 10%. And by the time you reach 5 years, you would have the equivalent of people paying $25 for the game. That is fascinating. However, I don't think the reality is going to be that I'm going to be in a position to just take the money from players and invest it. I feel like the reality is that I'm going to need to take the money from players and use it to like not die. Because I think I can do this alpha stage part-time. I mean, that's obviously the plan. I have a day job and I have no alternative source of income. I have no passive income or anything like that. So this is all going to be done under a part-time work schedule. It would be nice if I have enough interest and enough players who are excited for things like the Steam Workshop that they'll pay for early access and I can go to like full-time, let alone, you know, pay for other people to work on the game. So I would like for the beta and gold phases of the game's development to be, you know, me working on the game full-time, but that's obviously a dream. Ryson, this 9-box Battlefield going to be something like Mega Man Battle Network? That is what is coming to mind with how you're explaining it. Maybe. Mega Man Battle Network is a video game series. Let's see if we can find a picture of it. Oh, I see what you mean. You're talking about like this sort of thing. This is like a tactical. Just give me the picture. Here we go. This you're talking about this sort of thing. This like this 9-box sort of thing. Yeah, this is not dissimilar to what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can illustrate it better in a sprite ship scale mockup. I believe this is the right file. Physics. Then you need to create a company and get some investment money. We'll see. That's not really the direction I want to go. I'm not really trying to go into the building up a studio and getting like VC investments and stuff like that. It really is a solitary, like this is really something I'm trying to do myself. And you know, if that means I have to work on it part-time for the majority of its development, I think that I'm okay with that. But yeah, I have in previous lives, I have pursued things like that. Not with tremendous success. I feel like the current environment is really tough. Anyway, so Ryson, here's like a box that's like, this is like a 15 by 15 by 5 box, which is like maybe the size of a modest ship or something like that. And this is zoomed in. So like, let's open the other file. Let's open the hull exploration file. Is that anywhere? This should be here. Here it is, hull shape exploration. So we have 2 scales that we're supporting, right? We have the full zoomed in scale, this scale. And then we also have a half scale for all these parts. For external, the exterior view, we support a half scale. We may or may not support a quarter scale. I don't think I want to support quarter scale. I think it'd be too hard. But we have half scale and we have full scale. So the idea is that when you're fully zoomed in, you're looking at your own ship. You're looking inside your ship. You're like moving crews around your ship. And that's the zoomed in part. And that's kind of the only thing we've been working on so far. But the idea is that you then zoom out to half scale. And here's like 2 ships adjacent to each other at half scale. And this is where you do things like pick a weapon system and target an enemy ship. And here is just 2 ships adjacent to each other. But you could easily imagine a canvas that's bigger where we've got, you know, another ship out here at the diagonal and another ship over on the side or a ship over here. So you've got essentially 9 possible relative positions. And that's the 9-box, is you have your ship in the middle and there's 9 kind of abstracted slots on each side of you. And so there is some positionality in moving. And that's kind of what we're talking about. That's what I'm kind of talking about when I'm talking about the 9-box battlefield. It's the central position, like how Mega Man here is. And then so it's not like this, where this is like 2 separate 9 boxes like facing off against each other. It's more of just like a slightly more positional thing than like FTL, because FTL is like fully, oops, I don't know what FTK is. FTL, faster than light. FTL is much more abstract in that it's just, you know, one ship on your ship and then enemy ship, and there's no positionality between them. We're trying to introduce a little bit more positionality in our game. Yeah, the whole arena is 9 by well, no, it's 3 by 3. So for a total of 9 boxes, it would be a 3 by 3 area. And I think that would be interesting, because then you have basically adjacent is close and diagonal is like kind of misaligned. So you might have rules about how maybe certain weapons, maybe you have like a battery, like a port facing battery that can only target a ship that's adjacent to you on the port side. Maybe if a ship is in front of you or at your diagonal, maybe you can't target it with that battery. Maybe you need to use something else like missiles or something to hit a ship. So there will be some positionality, and turning your ship and orienting your ship relative to another ship will matter in my imagining of how the 9-box battlefield works. That's the dream. But anyway, so yeah, what I need to do with this kind of new idea here about how we want to structure this, because before hearing this talk last week, I really didn't know how or when I was going to make the game available for people to play, right? I don't know. Like, what do? Do you wait until you've got enough for like a big demo, like a big functional demo? I was going to do a vertical slice and maybe make that a demo. And the vertical slice, honestly, was going to be very similar to this alpha MVP launch. And I think that's okay. But I think I kind of like Walt's idea of we put the alpha version all the way up until it's like full, like feature complete. Well, I say feature complete. It's going to basically be all the parts of the game except this Steam Workshop bit. So obviously in the alpha versions of the game, you will be able to make your own ships and you'll be able to make your own scenarios and stuff like that. I don't really want to support sharing that stuff directly in terms of sharing files, because there's a lot of security issues with that. Especially if you don't have something like the Steam Workshop to mediate that. It's really hard to do that stuff safely. I am thinking about some stuff where maybe there will be a way to share a ship in the MVP thing, in that you could have maybe a string. Like maybe when you build a ship, it creates this long string. It creates this long string that the tile editor could use to recreate that ship in someone else's client. So I still wanted to have some support for some sharing. I don't know if I could do scenarios that way. That's a little trickier. But I think we could at least support sharing ship designs, by basically letting players like pass basically like seeds back and forth that are just descriptions of what the ship, how the tile editor can build the ship. Which is not as good as, full mod support with like Steam Workshop, because in Steam Workshop, another player could have drawn out like a new texture. They could have drawn out a new tile map or something. And so that kind of thing would be lost. You wouldn't be able to support that sort of thing with a stringified system here. But I think that's cool. And I think that'll be the tentpole feature that'll like push people to, if they like the classic version, which is the alpha. I think the way to push them to go to the beta would be, one, all the new content that I'll be making, but also all of the content that people can put up on the workshop that they wouldn't have been able to do before. So I think having that significantly larger amount of content would be a good reason for people to go to the beta. Like, I think that is a value add And that'll probably be the one feature missing from the alpha full release, which is why I've only listed this one feature here in the beta. Hey, Rhiannon, are scenarios going to be scriptable? If so, any ideas on how you're going to implement that? I think they are going to be scriptable. I don't have any ideas on how I'm going to implement that. I think they're going to be scriptable within the confines of this editor. I think the scenario editor is going to be a lot like the tile map editor or the tile block editor, which is an editor that we run in game. So I don't know how much I'm going to have like a scripting language available to the player, but the scenario editor is at least going to let you say, this character goes here, says this thing, or this ship hails you and says this thing, and then it targets you with its weapons or something. Like, it'll have room for like parameters and logic. I'm not sure how we're going to implement that. I think that'll be pretty cool. Physics, you like the idea of giving the players a limited experience for free, like just a few levels or a limit to how far they can go in the game. They want to play more, they should pay. Ryson, you're excited for it? Yeah, me too. Physics, I think your response is reasonable. And I think you are a more financially sound and business-minded person than I am. Part of the reason to make the ostensibly the full game, quote unquote, I think of it as a horizontal slice, right? So like you can do, in game development, you can do like a vertical slice or a horizontal slice. The vertical slice is like, what does Tim Kaine call it? He calls it like a beautiful corner or something like that. And if you imagine like a city block, it's like, it's just that one corner. It's gorgeous. It's developed to the full fidelity that the final game would be, but it's just one slice. It's just one tiny little part. What we're talking about for this alpha launch is the opposite. We're talking about a horizontal slice. So this would be like having all of the systems of the game available to be played in this limited experience. So you can play through the whole game, like a whole run, because this is a roguelike style kind of game, right? So it's run based. So you'll be able to play through a whole run in this version. The issue, the stuff you're missing, and why I still consider it a limited experience, is there's just not going to be as much content. Like, I'm not going to be able to design a million ships. I'm not going to have written thousands of scenarios. Like, it's going to be like the variety. Like in FTL, you can jump into a system and all sorts of crazy things might be waiting for you there from a procedural standpoint. But I'm not going to have that many events, right? Like that's why we're going to eventually, once the horizontal slice is in place and we've got all the systems, then we switch to this paid beta. And that's when I start introducing just more and more and more content and variety and things to do, which is supplemented by the Steam Workshop, which is like additional content that players are making for other players to experience, which, you know, takes a little bit of the workload off me. Ryson, vertical slice is a little bit of every subsystem, so you have an example of everything you need to flesh out with the content for the full game. That's your idea of a vertical slice? I don't think so. I think what you're describing is closer to horizontal slice. So to me, a vertical slice, so like take Slay the Spire. To me, a vertical slice of Slay the Spire is like a fight. Like a single fight would be a vertical slice. And then a horizontal slice would be like, you can play through an entire run, but there's not a lot to do. There's like not a lot of variety or experience. That's my understanding of it. And you can make different arguments. I think you just think of case when you hear slice. Yeah, I don't think they're the most helpful terms, but I think a vertical slice is like the core loop. Like whatever the core loop is, that's the vertical slice. And then the outer loops that like connect the core loop or like motivates you to keep going. So in like FTL, the outer loop is like jumping from system to system, right? Not just one fight. So like in practicality, you'd probably have like one system. You'd probably have like a demo of FTL would probably be like getting through the first system. So it wouldn't be just one fight, but it also wouldn't be the whole outer loop of like completing a run. It would be some kind of somewhere in between. Yeah. So yeah, we have like a scenario editor, strategic layer. We're also going to need like a... I want to put campaign editor here, but I don't know what that means. Like, to me, a scenario is like part of an individual fight, and it would allow you to craft different scenarios, like different fights, like scripted fights, like an ambush or a distress call, or it would give you these different scripted events or scripted encounters, I guess would maybe be the right word. And then the strategic layer is going to be more of like the FTL style, like jumping from system to system, and that's going to need like a campaign generator thing. So that will be necessary. Maybe we just add that here, like a campaign editor. That's, to me, that's distinctive from a scenario editor. A campaign editor is like, here are the parameters of like the overall run. I need to explain strategic layer better. What I mean by that. Rhiannon, would a campaign string together multiple scenarios based on the outcome of individual scenarios? Exactly. That's kind of what we're thinking about, Rhiannon. That's a good way of putting it. The campaign editor would control this strategic layer, which is like the what you do in between individual encounters. Probably a different way to describe that. I'm actually going to flip the order of these because you would need the campaign editor before you could start having a strategic layer. Or honestly, the campaign editor is part of the strategic layer. I could say like strategic map, or I could say like I could say something like branching. Run-based. Strategic layer. Campaign is like an overarching storyline, right? A campaign is made of multiple scenarios. Yeah, you guys are on it. A strategic layer is like a loadout screen. No, when I just threw strategic layer in there, and to me that refers to like, it's not a scenario selector. It's like, you know how in like Slay the Spire or FTL, you have like you have like these. Is it going to show me one on here? You select what systems you want to go through. It's that like branching path where you like upgrade your ship and you go to the store and you pick out what nodes you want to go visit next. How are there no pictures of this? Surely there would be one in Slay the Spire if I looked up Slay the Spire. It's kind of insane to me that nobody shows the systems map. Oh, here it is. So it's like this sort of thing. Oh, God. It's like this kind of deal here. This shows you like all the places you could go, and so you can plan out this branching series of things. This would kind of be like what we're talking about. The more strategic. So if the 9-box battlefield is like the tactical stuff where you're dealing with a single encounter. Yeah, it's not like a setup screen. Yeah, world map. It's like all of the things that exist as parts of the outer loops. Because like there's the core inner loop, which is just scenarios, encounters, fights, stuff that you're dealing with in a single location, and then you have, you know, these systems that support the interest in continuing on and like completing a run and like going through the map. It's like the glue that holds the core loop together. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Call it a campaign. So we need a campaign editor so we can set up a campaign, and then we'll have a campaign map. Actually, I think it's going to be a whole simulation, isn't it? Campaign. Because stuff is going to be happening in the campaign like outside of your control. Because this is like the Iliad or whatever, right? So we'll see something like this. So the campaign editor will be the thing that lets you set up like parameters that will control how the campaign simulation is set up, in the same way that the scenario editor controls the 9-box battlefield and like what can happen. We can put the 9-box battlefield here in the MVP. Actually, I guess we need the scenario editor down here, because it could at least be a basic version of the. Yeah, I think this is reasonable. I think we're gonna put the scenario editor down here. It can be like bare bones, like it's not gonna be able to do much, but I do think we need a scenario editor in the MVP. Alignment in Obsidian is kind of this pain in the ass. You'd think it would be a little more precise. Oh, what the? There we go. Campaign planner. Ryson, are you going to have preset layout? Seems like something you'd want to procedurally generate. Yeah, that's... So config menu for the campaign generator's parameters. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Because the campaign is based off of... We're based off certain premises of how a campaign will play out that are just locked in, but the parameters will be very flexible. Physics lab, do you plan on doing a really rough alpha to test if the main game loop is fun before investing a lot of time on the rest? That is the goal of the MVP launch of the alpha version. That's also a good reason to do this and to get it in people's hands as early as possible. It's both to like build the audience, but also to get feedback as soon as possible, to get real feedback. So the initial MVP is intended to be all you can do. Honestly, the only reason that the editors are in here is because I need to set these up. These might not actually be available to the player very much early on. Like, these are not going to be finished tools in the initial version. Or if they are available to the player, it's going to be very obviously, like, pretty rough. The goal is just going to be to test out the individual fight, the closed loop, or not the closed loop, the core loop, which is like ship-to-ship combat, things like that. So it's really about the shipboard simulation and the battlefield, the test bed of the battlefield where you can actually fight one ship against another ship. But I need at least a basic version of the scenario editor so that you can be like, I want to fight 2 ships, or I want to fight a ship and I want an ally, or I want to fight a 2v2 or something like that. Like single player only. We're not talking about multiplayer. We're just talking about like, I have a ship and there's like an allied ship and maybe we're fighting 2 enemy ships or something like that. Like, I do need a basic scenario editor in the MVP, I think, just so that I can say, here are the ships that I want, that I've got a test set up. And then, yeah, I can have presets. So I can have like basic presets. Rhiannon, are you going to have the ability for enemies to board another ship? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's part of the going to be part of the engineering of the 9-box battlefield and the shipboard simulation is there's really not going to be a distinction. Like, you could teleport your crew onto another ship in a boarding action, but they might do the same thing to you. Or like they might, you know, they might launch like a boarding torpedo. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, crew members will be able to go cross into different boxes and fight on different ships for sure. Are they going to be factions? Yeah, I think so, Ryson. Physics, got it. When you used to build games, you would put like green and red blocks on the screen and just test the main game loop without any graphics or menus or editors. Usually would take like 2 to 3 days to build. Yeah, this is a little more complicated than that, and we are doing it in a way that's a little more visual. We're not gray boxing very much. I mean, we are a little bit if you like think about the way our editor is. Our editor, all of our we don't have any textures on any of this stuff. These are literally gray boxes. But like if I start building something, it is a gray box. But we are also at the same time testing other things, like testing our art style and stuff. So like when we build a thing out like this, I actually don't want it to be like this. I guess what I want to do is I want to run the game from writer. Because if I run the game from writer, I think I can get the full window. Oh, I can switch back to Vulkan now. We're still on D3D12. So yeah, so this is I consider this gray boxing. Which is like the way to early test something. So we are trying to do that to an extent. And I have had previous prototypes of this game. Like I tested out pathfinding. Like I have a version of this where I just have a static environment and I've got crew members running around and stuff. So we've tested different systems in isolation, but what we're trying to do right now is integrate it all together. So I don't think we're going to do such a limited testing as that, but we do need to test this stuff for sure. I'm being kind of bold with my presumption that this core loop is good, but I feel kind of safe in that in the general sense because this is like FTL is just good. Like I don't feel like it's going out on a limb to say that like this kind of tactical real-time combat is just good. Obviously, my implementation of it needs to be good, but I don't feel like I'm taking a huge gamble. Obviously, the challenge for us and the main risks for us are this like the verticality we're introducing to FTL. The fact that not all the information is on the screen at all times. This is like kind of a game design rule that we are consciously breaking, and it's kind of I actually have a better place I can look at this. So like there's a core game design rule, which is like everything should be available. All the information you need in a perfect world is available on one screen at all times. This is how FTL works. This is how Into the Breach works. Like there is no hidden information. All information is available on one screen at all times. Like you can always see what your crew is doing, what your systems look like, what the enemy is doing. We're introducing verticality with this setup so that you can see what's going on in this room, or you could go down and see what's going on in this room, but you can't really do both at the same time. And so I think we're going to need to, from a pacing standpoint, we're going to need to slow things down a little bit, maybe. I think we're going to end up with something a little more RimWorld-y, something that's a little more simulation-y, and something, and maybe not quite as tight and like action-packed as like FTL. I don't know though. This is just my thought process from seeing this. But yeah, there are some ideas of our design that we need to test out that are not validated, that we actually do need to just get this in front of people as soon as possible and see if this stuff works. Because this is untried. I'm already enjoying using this tool though, so. But the tool is not the game. But I think we're addressing the visibility issues a little bit. I think we're doing okay. I think we're getting there, but yeah, I'm concerned. I'm definitely concerned. Also, our flood fill algorithm seems to be basically broken, or we're not running it. Concerning. You didn't understand that the main game loop is building ships. It's not. Here's the unfortunate thing, physics. It's not. Unlike Cosmeteer, where the main game loop is building ships, the main game loop of this is closer to FTL. It's about being the captain of a ship, not being an architect. I'm actually not 100% sure how... There's 3 different ways we could do this, right? There's... I'm the only one that can use the shipbuilder, and it's just a tool for me to build the game. There's... The shipbuilder is available in-game to modders, so that people that want to mod in a ship. Or there's 3. The shipbuilder is available to everyone, and they can build their own ships and modify existing ships. I don't know if I want people, even in that scenario, I don't think I would want people to be able to build ships during a run. I think if you build a ship, it would be like, I think this is a good ship design. Let me see how it does in a run. We're kind of just, we kind of got ourselves into this position because we've been kind of just dog fooding our own tools. Like, I knew I needed a bespoke ship editing tool because we have a complex auto tiler. So I can't just set up the ship statically, like in Godot. Like, I can't just like go into Godot and just like set up my own tile map and just like draw the stuff out myself in a tile map. I've tried that. It's incredibly tedious. So we have a tool. It's not the core loop. It just happens to be the thing we built first because we need it to build the rest of the game. So what is the main game loop, and have you tested the fun factor of it? So the main game loop, this might be, again, falling on deaf ears depending on, you know, how FTL oriented you are, but it is straight up FTL faster than light. Like, it is about managing, it's about 2 things really. It's about managing the location of your crew, and it's about, 3 things, and it's about managing the distribution of power through your systems. And it's about using those systems to fight other ships that are similar to yours. So it's like fairly symmetrical in terms of both ships have crew, have power, have systems. This is the core loop. So I feel like this is fun. The open question is whether my version of it is fun, which is a fair question, and which is something that we do need to test soon. Sometimes you test out gameplay with paper models, like in real life, before going to the computer. I think that's reasonable, but I think for our purposes, this is a much closer and better equivalent of like a paper prototype for us, because this is another game that does something very similar, but it's just doing it in 1 fewer dimensions than us. This is a 2D version of this, and this game is beloved. This game has sold at least 2 million copies on Steam. It's like a beloved little game. Sold millions of copies. The open question for us is whether this gameplay can be brought up to 3 dimensions. Like, is this still good? Is this still fun if you're doing it in 3 dimensions? And that is something we need to test out. But to test that out, we've needed to build out quite a bit of simulation. But yeah, I think paper prototyping is good. I think early prototyping is good. We're taking a bit different of an approach. We're betting on the fact that FTL is good, and I think that's a safe bet. What we shouldn't bet on is that my 3D version of it is good, and that is something we should test, but we're having to develop a lot of tools and simulation stuff to be able to even test this, because this is not trivial. This is like a 3D simulation that we're rendering in 2D using only tile maps. So getting that whole thing set up has been a bit of a chore, but I mean, the editor works. It needs a little bit more variety to it, but it's enough for our purposes. So I think the immediate plan is to start moving on to this. So we've got the tile block editor pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the tile block editor right now. I think there's some additional things we need to do. The next thing we really need to work on is the shipboard simulation. This is things like pathfinding. Pathfinding for both crew and also for power. Like for power, because power conduits are actually going to be, actually a thing, and they're like in the walls, and like, so if like a power conduit gets damaged, you either need to repair the conduit or reroute power through a different conduit. And conduits can only handle so much power. So routing crew and routing power are really the 2 core activities of we already talked about the zoomed in view versus the zoomed out view. But yeah, those are the 2 core activities. And so shipboard simulation to me is the zoomed in view. This is like the interior, like we're moving crew around, we're bringing systems up, we're taking them down, we're distributing power. That's the next thing we need to do. And then after that, what we need is this battlefield, which is the zoomed out view, which is like you've zoomed out, you see the exterior of your ship, and now you can be like, this weapon cannon needs to target the ship next to me. And that's where you interact with exterior aspects of your ship, is out in this battlefield view. So we're kind of working our way through this list. There's only 4 things on here, and I feel like these 4 things all need to be complete to a certain extent. Like the scenario editor can be so simple at first. It's really just going to be like, here's your 9 box. What do you want in the 9 box? And whatever's in the center is like your ship. And then you can be like, I want my ship. I want it to be this ship. I'm going to put it here. And then I want to fight another ship. It's going to start on my left. Or I want to fight 2 ships, and I want them to be 1 in front and 1 behind, or like whatever. Or I want to fight an enemy ship here, and I want an allied ship here or something. Or maybe I want to do a free-for-all. So we'll have a really basic scenario editor that's just like, pick a ship, put it in a spot in the 9 box, designate whether it's like yours, a friend's, or a foe's, like enemy or friendly. Not a friend as in a person, because again, this is a single player game. But yeah, I think this is the series of things that we need to do. I think we want to work on this series of things. Actually, we can get rid of this. So the tile block editor we need before we can even build the shipboard simulation out. The shipboard simulation is dependent on the tile block editor, because you can't simulate a ship if you can't build it. The 9-box battlefield is, to an extent, dependent on the scenario editor. How'd this get down here? It's 2025. We don't have friends. Ooh, so true. So I think this is kind of our current focus, is going from the editor to an actual shipboard simulation, which will be crew running around, power being distributed, systems going up and down. And then once we have that, one, we can figure out whether that part is fun, because that part by itself is going to need to be, or maybe not fun, but at least like manageable. Like you need to be able to keep an idea in your head about like where my crew is, what are things like. We need some visualizers so you can visualize like the power distribution on the ship. Then we'll work on the battlefield so that like the minimum viable product of this is truly we have two ships next to each other and they're fighting. Like that'll be the earliest test of whether the gameplay works. Is like, is it fun for you to have a ship fighting another ship? And if that turns out to be fun, then we're golden. Everything else about this will fall together because will fall in place, because things like the campaign stuff, like roguelike run-based structures are not like, they're like very well understood, I think, nowadays. Between Slay the Spire and FTL and other run-based games, I don't think that's like crazy. But yeah, we really need, I'm most concerned about our cursed problem, quote unquote cursed problem, which is like our visibility issue, which is why I've spent so much time on like the cutaway systems and stuff like that, making it so that we can definitely see things, see what's going on. Like, you need to be able to just see into these spaces. Like, that's so crucial. Rhiannon Journey redeeming the stretch. Thank you. Thank you, Rhiannon. But yeah, I'm moderately concerned about this. I've also maybe am supporting ship designs that are too big. Our earliest ship design should probably be quite small. But we can support some pretty enormous ship designs now. I need to do a few more things. I'm getting to the point where I'm like realizing I need to prioritize a little bit better. Rhiannon Journey, sometimes it's been confusing for you to figure out which layer I'm building on. Same. I was dealing with that to an extent by having like a grid system, but that wasn't working. And also now I'm using the grids for the selection, for like the selection part, which lets us like, you know, we can cut this and move it. Things like that. I think what I'm going to do is just have a thing on the side here that just is like some kind of depth gauge where it says like first, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like it just shows you what level you're on, maybe. A little more hardcore. Because yeah, it's a little confusing to figure out what level you're on. I need to do something with that. Maybe we do some things with like modulation. Maybe we'll like dim the levels that you're not currently working on or something like that. There needs to be something to help you more intuitively. Yeah, I used to have these gray things here. I used to have gray outlines for the area, but I took them away. Like there's a couple versions of it that we have. Like we have this version, which is the elastic version. Instead of hiding the other layers, you can make them semi-transparent. That's really tough because of the way the auto tiler works. So we can do this. We can do this where we basically have like outlines and they're modulated based on what layer you're on. But we can also modulate the whole layer above you. So we could modulate the layers above and below you so it's a little more clear what layer you're on. But yeah, I don't know. We need some kind of guide to help figure this out. Because yeah, I agree it's confusing. Because there's no perspective, so it's really hard to tell whether you're talking about something that's just in front or something that's below. I agree that it's a problem. I think it'll be less of a problem playing, but it's definitely a problem in the editor. Maybe have a slightly transparent grid only overlaid on the active layer. I think that's reasonable, Ryson. We might try that. We could even have it like only draw around your cursor or something like that. So it would make your cursor be like your depth gauge. So you could tell where the cursor was relative to everything around it. I think something like that would go a long way. And then yeah, with Z indexing, the grid would not show up underneath layers above it. Yeah, let's try something like that. I think that would be good. Maybe we'll try that tomorrow or something. Or only on the active layer, but also centered on the cursor and it fades out. Yeah, I think we're thinking in a similar direction. You like the idea of a small grid around the cursor? Okay, let's do that. Let's try that tomorrow. Because today's a really short stream. Partly because I'm exhausted, partly because I'm just kind of getting back into it. After taking all this time off of the game dev. And partly because I need to start. I was kind of working open-ended and I really didn't have a goal in terms of a timeline to have this stuff ready, but I would like to have the alpha, the MVP, the minimum viable product for the alpha. I would like to have this up by the next GDC. I would like to have this up in a year. And I think that's reasonable. Because we've worked on the tile block editor for like a few months. It's basically done. Shipboard simulation will probably take a few months. Scenario editors probably don't need to spend a lot of time on right now. 9-box battlefields, probably more time. Like, I feel like it's going to be hard and it's going to be a stretch, but I think we can do this in a year. So I feel like I have a little more of a concrete goal as far as what I want to achieve when. It is good to have time goals. Yeah, it is. So I think having that will be helpful. It'll definitely add pressure, but I think it'll be good. All right, yeah, let's work on the grid tomorrow. Rhiannon, now chat's goal is to keep adding features to the editor so development never ends. You're off to a great start. You're off to a great start. I mean, this is the other reason we can't just gray box everything, is like, I'm gonna make this available to people. People are gonna use it, and if it sucks, like if it's just unfinished, most people aren't gonna follow along with the stream enough to like know exactly where we're at in terms of development and why things are the way they are. So things need to just be good. If we're including them in one of the launches and one of the releases, they need to just be good on their face, at like face value. So if we make the tile block editor available to players, it needs to be good. It needs to be usable. It needs to be intuitive, which is different than the way that I would build that tool if it was just for me. If it was just for me, it would be so janky and it would have so many weird little quirks. I mean, it does because it is. But yeah, that's what we need to work on, is making these systems polished and, you know, and I think that's going to be good in the long run, because it means when we finally get to like beta or whatever, everything in the game is going to have gone through so much playtesting and iteration that it's going to be strong. Because from what I understand, your early access launch is your real launch on Steam. Steam does not make a distinction between your early access launch and like a full launch. Like, so what we put into beta in Steam early access, that needs to be good. It needs to be tested, battle tested. And I think I really like the focus on getting that kind of player feedback here. The editor is fun enough on its own, people will just make ships. And that's what we want, because I'm one person. Like, I can't make all the content for this game. I mean, I will, but it's not going to be as much as it would be otherwise. And a game like this that's very systemic needs tons of content. So yeah, I really want to make the process good, because I want people to be modding for this game. Like, This game is only going to have legs if it has a really healthy modding scene. That is the only thing. But yeah, I feel like this free in development alpha thing is the third pillar of like, or it's in line with the other two things that I'm doing. Cause like I'm developing this game from scratch, quote unquote scratch. I'm building up this game. I'm building up my stream. So like we're building up our audience on Twitch and YouTube and stuff. So the game is being built up and the stream is being built up. And this kind of free in development thing, I think is going to work really well because then people, because then they're going to grow up together. And so the audience will also grow because people will be playing. And I think that's really good. I think that's going to make this game really healthy in the long run. If we're able to get, if as the stream grows and as the game grows, the audience also grows. And we're just taking in feedback and we're just improving the game the whole time. I think that's how you get a good game in this environment. I think that's how we stand out as a solo dev project. Is that when we finally do show up on Steam after, you know, the next 5 years or something like that, we're good. We're like, we are in a good place. Like the new player experience is like perfect because we've been testing it for like 4 years. That's kind of my goal with this because taking feedback is hard. Acting on feedback is tough. But a game needs to be play tested so thoroughly and relentlessly, and I think this is gonna be the way to do it. And the barrier to entry is gonna be super low because it's gonna be free. So if anyone's interested in the game at all, and they come into the stream and they're like, "Oh, what's up with this game?" Hopefully, a year from now, I can tell people, "Oh, go play it. Go play it on itch. Go hop in the Discord, provide some feedback." We'll make a Discord bot that like collects feedback for me. It'll be great. It's gonna be good. I'm pretty happy with this direction, and I think this is good. I think this provides a lot of clarity around the actual production of the game that I maybe didn't have before GDC, about like what my plan was to actually, you know, do the thing. Yeah, I'm pleased. I think I'm gonna wrap up the stream now. I know it's really, really short. Part of it was I mentioned it in Discord, but there was one of those city trucks outside, the ones that have those enormous vacuums that like sucks everything up out of like the sewers or the storm drains or whatever. Those like giant vacuum trucks. Dude just sat outside my window for an hour, just blasting, just like vacuuming up the whole underworld, it felt like. So we started late and I got some stuff to do and I'm tired. So all that to say, I think we're going to wrap up here for today. I think this is really nice design discussion. I really appreciate everyone kind of hanging out and walking through this thought process with me. Tomorrow we'll get back to some nitty gritty actual development stuff. We'll make that active layer grid thing. We'll figure out how to do that in the auto tiler in a way that isn't terrible. Thanks, Rhiannon and Journey. I hope you have a good day. Thanks, Ryson, for hanging out in Physics Lab. Fusionist. Anyone else that's been lurking. Really appreciate you. Thank you all so much for watching. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.